Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another weekly edition of All Aboard's Weekly Tips. And so, what I'm going to be talking about today is a topic that a lot of agents ask me about often, right? And they always say to me, Andrew, I am trying to grow my sales team, but it feels like I'm just kind of spinning my tires. It feels like I can't get any traction out there. I have these new hire goals. I need to get salespeople to basically hit those goals, but I just can't seem to find any talent. And if I do find talent, it's not sticking. And so, how do I scale up my sales team? How did you do it, right? So, what I want to do is I want to talk about the method that allowed us to take our sales team from 8 people to 15 people in a matter of about 6 months, and then from 15 people to 20 plus people in another few months, right? And so in 2025, as I talked about in the last issue, is that we actually scaled down our sales team. But in 2022 and in 2023, we doubled the size of our sales team and then increased it by another 50% shortly after that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how I did that from a logistics perspective. So what I'm not going to talk about today is I'm not going to talk about how do I find candidates. I'm also not going to talk about what I look for in candidates. I'm not going to talk about interview tactics. I am going to be talking about the logistic aspect of recruiting, okay? Recruiting can be for some very, very easy, and for other people, very, very difficult. What I would say across all people, no matter what, whether you find it easy or difficult, it is extremely time consuming. It is also very, very expensive. People don't realize the cost of a bad hire or a failed hire, okay? So I will talk about the logistics of how to hire in a way to scale up your sales team. All right, so here we are. Let's go ahead and dive in. So today's presentation, right, today's topic is don't stop hiring. Okay. I told you I'm going to tell you how to get up to scale. And the number one rule that we have here is do not stop hiring salespeople. Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. And so as we jump in, I want to talk about the most common mistake that agents make when they're trying to scale up their sales team. Okay. So the biggest mistake that they make is hiring only what they need. All right, so let's look at an example of this. And if we think about you're an agent out there and your goals went up pretty much all over the country. It doesn't matter what your carrier affiliation is or if you're an independent, goals have gone up. Expectations for us have gone up. You might say, I'm going to kind of hold pat and do exactly what I'm doing. But no matter what, the theme is consistent. Carriers are wanting more and more and more production out of agents. Okay. And so the biggest mistake that people make is they say, look, I have 3 salespeople today and I want to get to 6. And they say, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to hire 3 people. So when you go out and you hire 3 people specifically, you kind of put yourself in this vicious cycle. And we talk about these agents, right? We talk about, as an agent, we're spinning our tires. And why are we spinning our tires? Well, it's because we're in this vicious cycle of hiring. And what is this vicious cycle of hiring? We say, okay, well, I have 3 people today and I need to get 6. So I go out and I hire 3 people. Well, guess what? First thing happens is one of them fails, right? Maybe they fail their test. Maybe they fail out of training. Maybe they get in and you realize that they are really not made for the role and that a better role might suit them, or that maybe they don't have the willpower to make the dials that you expect, or they don't have the conscientiousness or the work ethic that they need to be successful in your culture. So maybe 1 or 2 of those 3 people fail out. And then what happens, right? People quit. I can't tell you how many times we'll hire and we take our time and we go through the process. And then somebody says, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm going to quit. Or guess what? Life happens. Maybe they have a death in the family. Maybe something traumatic happens to them and they say, you know what, like at this time, I just can't do this. And now you had 3 people, you went to 6, and now you're back to 4, or maybe even back to 3. You're back to square one. And so the biggest mistake that agents make when it comes to hiring is that they hire only what they need. And so one really good rule of thumb here is that you always want to stick to what we call the +1 rule. And the +1 rule basically says is that if you need 3 people, hire 4. And what that does is by always adding 1 more person than you need, you give yourself a buffer for someone to quit or to fail, right? These things happen all of the time. And guess what? It happens to me too. we hire people, we have people have life happen and then they can't work for 2 weeks. Or guess what? Like somebody starts and they say, well, I need, 3 weeks off 2 months from now because I'm getting married. And then we have a decision to make. We say, should we even start them? Should we not start them? All types of things happen with people in their first 90 days that kind of throws our plans, into a tailspin. So what we want to do is we want to avoid this vicious cycle. And the way that we try to do that is to use the +1 rule. If you're really trying to scale, like if you're trying to add 10 people, use a +2 rule. Always hire 1 or 2 extra beyond what you need, because people are going to fail. People are going to quit. And guess what? Sometimes you get the new people in, you hire 2, they both work out, and then one of your most tenured people quits. These things happen all of the time. Going from 8 salespeople to 15 or 16 salespeople was very, very difficult. We had to do a lot of hiring. We had a lot of turnover, and that can be kind of daunting. And yes, it's very, very expensive because you're paying for a salary that people don't end up paying for with production, okay? But that is part of the game here. So always make sure you're hiring extra than what you need, because otherwise you get stuck in this vicious cycle, okay? So that is the first and most common mistake that we see from agents. And so I wanted to point that out before we kind of talk about the next thing that we're going to do. And so if we're going to hire and we're going to hire well, basically what we need to do is we need to create a timeline for hiring, okay? But this is why I want to point out why it makes sense to have a timeline, okay? Because what you're seeing in front of you is not, in my opinion, the ideal state. This is what normally happens with an agent, okay? So let me just walk you through this a little bit, okay? So let's say it's January 24th. This newsletter just came out, the video's here, and I say, you know what? I've decided that I want to hire 3 or 4 new people. And you say, all right, perfect. Well, maybe it takes about 3, 4, 5 days to go ahead and kind of get your ducks in a row. You get your job descriptions, you decide where you're going to post them. Maybe you're going to work with a recruiter. Maybe you need to reach out to a recruiter. Maybe you need to sign up for a company, right? But before you know it, it's been a full week, and now you've finally gotten your job posted, but you're already 1 week behind. You've made the decision. It takes about a week to get that job posted. Maybe people move faster than this if they're already in a hiring cycle. But again, I'm looking at this from a standpoint of, you know what? I haven't been hiring. Let me start hiring. So 7 days in, you've gotten your job posted, whether it's directly or with a recruiter. Maybe it's on Indeed or LinkedIn or Monster, wherever people are finding candidates today, or maybe a recruiter's out there. Okay. So day 7, the job is finally posted. Well, you know what? It takes a few days for resumes to roll in. The recruiter's sending you people over, and you know what? Like you're looking at resumes, you're saying this one's pretty good, and that one's pretty good. And then by day 14, it's been a whole nother week. You've sifted through resumes, you've scheduled some resumes or some interviews, and now you're actively talking to people. But again, now you're 2 weeks into this process, okay? 2 weeks into this process. So then we say, okay, well, you know what? Like, what is the right way to go through an interview process? And some people hire extremely quickly. Some people hire way too slow. And what we do at Peachy Insurance is we use a 3 touch point strategy. I don't want to say 3 interview strategy because that would not be accurate, right? What we do is we do kind of like a pre-screen, which we call a recruiting call. And that is meant to get people, hyped and interested in the role. We ask a couple quick questions. If they sound good on the phone, we kind of go into sales mode. We start selling them on the opportunity. Then we take them and we put them in a one-on-one interview with the person who would be managing them, okay? And that's usually 30 minutes to an hour on an interview. And then if they pass that round, they go to a final interview with our sales trainer where they do active live role play, right? And we do it this way because the manager needs to sign off on them. I'm a believer that managers should hire and fire their own people. But second, the sales trainer needs to make sure that he feels confident that they are willing and able to do the job. And that's why we do role play in the interview, because if somebody can't take feedback or implement feedback, it's not going to be a good fit in our culture. So, maybe interviews take another 14 days, right? It takes another 2 weeks to get them interviewed. And guess what? Like, you can hire faster than that. But the reality is that you are never going to know what you're getting into in 30 minutes. And hell, you might not know what you're getting into after like 2.5 hours, but in 2.5 hours, you can uncover a hell of a lot more than you can in 30 minutes, right? But now you can see that you've gone through interviews and you're already 30 days into this process. You're like, oh my God, right? So then guess what? You say, all right, well, I've done all these interviews. I'm going to go ahead and start offering candidates. And so maybe by day 35, 5 days later, you decide on some candidates, you get the offers out, they accept, maybe somebody took another job or something, but let's just assume they accept. Okay. But then you've got to throw them into your system. You got to get all their codes, all their access, all their passwords, everything. And you got to ship them equipment if you're remote, or you've got to make sure that their start date works. And guess what? Now it's been another 10 days. Well, it takes 45 days, right, for what you can see in this timeline from the day you decide to hire all the way to the time that they actually start. But just because they've started doesn't mean they're productive, right? Like you've got these new high goals and you need them to contribute to those goals. But guess what? You got to train them. And so then we say it takes about 30 days to train them. Maybe you have 5, 6, 7 days for kind of company trainings that they have to go through and kind of check the boxes on. And then, 1, 2, 3 weeks of live training in like a classroom setting or on the phone or doing role play or whatever it is and however you train. For us, it's dial out, go through company trainings, learn and make sure that insurance knowledge is solid, get on the phone. But that takes about 3 to 4 weeks all in, right? So really what happens is now we're at day 75 before they're even able to contribute to your production number and to your bottom line. And so what a lot of agents do is they'll hire 3 people, they'll go through this entire timeline, 1, 2, or maybe all 3 of them don't work out. They get to day 75 and they're right back to square one. They've wasted 75 days and they still have 3 salespeople. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen this happen, okay? And so we want to avoid this, and I'm going to tell you how we avoid this, and I'm going to give you the logistics on it. But before we do that, I am proud to announce that this issue of All Aboard is brought to you by Ideal Traits, okay? And so something I want to say is I know that nobody likes ads, right? But I only bring companies on as sponsors that I believe in, right? And Ideal Traits is helping agents grow their teams faster, okay? This newsletter is free. We try to bring value for free, and sponsors help us do that. And so one of the things I wanted to point out was, Ideal Traits has 4 really amazing features. They actually, they have way more than 4 features, but 4 that really, really stuck out to me, right? They have text recruiting, AI recruiting tools. They allow you to build a career page, and they have automated workflows. Let me just tell you a little bit why I like each of these things, okay? 1, texting prospects makes you stand out, right? If we think about our advantage as a small business owner versus a big corporate, if you apply somewhere at big corporate, you put it in, they send you an email, they send you another email, they send you an email. Everything's just done via email. As a small business owner, we have the ability to be more personable and to be faster, okay? And there's nothing better than if you apply to a job and then you get a text from the owner of that company or the recruiter at that company saying, hey, we got your resume, we'd love to talk, okay? Texting prospects makes you stand out. Next, when we talk about these AI recruiting tools as like a job description builder, I think that's amazing, right? One of the biggest criticisms I have of companies all over the country, not just in insurance, is that their job descriptions are incredibly boring. When we first wanted to scale hiring, I didn't write the job description myself. I went out and I hired a copywriter to write us a job description that wasn't boring. And then over time, I adjusted it. I made it better. As I got better at writing myself, I basically rewrote the whole thing, but it shouldn't be boring. And not everybody's going to want to write a job description. And that's where AI tools can come in. Okay. Third, your career page is your digital first impression. We have a career page for peachyinsurance.com. And basically it shows all types of things. It is a way to showcase your culture. It is a way to showcase your team. It is a way to showcase that you are different, right? It is your digital first impression. If they go to your website and it's just like your carrier page or something that looks like it's made in 1999, people are not going to have a great impression of it, okay? And the last thing when we talk about automated workflows is I have this kind of mentality in my agency is, can we automate it? Anytime we look at anything, we say, can we automate it? If we can't automate it, we delegate it. But more and more is being able to be automated with workflows and webhooks. Recruiting is a time sink. It is a valuable time sink, but it takes a lot of time. And so, guys, if you're looking to scale up your sales team, check out Ideal Traits. They have what a lot of people bring Ideal Traits on to do is to do their assessments, to find characteristics of salespeople. I know people that live and die by this. I use the assessments as well. It is a data point in the entire view a candidate for us, but other people live and die by it, right? So check out Ideal Traits. Great team over there. They've been amazing to work with off and on over the years. And what I would just say is that it's not only about the assessment. It's not only about these features that we talked about. They are constantly updating their platform and adding value, and the price is beyond reasonable. Okay. So there's a link in the body of the email. Check it out if you're looking to hire and scale up your sales team. Okay. So let's bring this bad boy home. All right. So the tip here, right? The way that we actually scale up the sales team is to hire in classes. Okay. And so this is what this looks like. So say we're going to go ahead and hire people. We hire 3 people together. All right, we'll bring them in. We talked about that timeline. Day 35, they start. All right, but go ahead and immediately start recruiting for another class 6 weeks later. Okay, and then when you bring those 3 people in 6 weeks later, and if you're not trying to scale up this much or you can't handle this much payroll, then maybe you bring in 1 person, and then 4 weeks later another person, and then 4 weeks later another person. Right? Think about how much training that you can handle. Not everybody has a dedicated trainer, but by continuously hiring, you shrink this timeline from 75 days all the way down to 30 to 40 days, okay? 30 days of production is a full month of production that you are missing out on if you don't start hiring in classes on a schedule kind of like this, okay? Because here's what this ends up happening, all right? We say, okay, well, in the first one, two people worked out, 1 person flamed out. And in the second class, only 1 person worked out. In the last class, 2 people worked out. And before you know it, we've got 5 more salespeople, okay? So just to kind of bring this whole thing home, right, is we have this timeline and people don't realize how long recruiting, training, hiring actually takes. It can take 75 days if you're moving well. And by hiring in classes, you increase your success rate. And by compressing the timeline, by hiring every 4 to 6 weeks, a new class, you take that 75 days and you shrink it, okay? And so again, if you want to scale up your sales team, stick to the +1 rule. Hire in classes, build a timeline, and stick to it. I think that your timeline can probably get to be 30 to 40 days if you are being efficient and good with your time. Start wide, right? Do this math yourself, but I would venture to guess that your timeline looks something like that 75-day piece, okay? So if you want to scale up your sales team, stick to the tips here. Thank you all so much. Check out Ideal Traits. They're an amazing company to work with. Let me know if you have any questions. And as always, we work to bring you value for free. And, we have services with Next Call Club that we'd love to help you with. If you are looking for a sales trainer because you don't have one in-house, guess what? The person who trains the entire Peachy sales team can be hired by you and your team. If you have a sales manager that you've just brought on or someone that you're looking to polish up, we offer sales manager training as well, also held by that trainer or our Chief Revenue Officer, Peter Godley. So with all those things being said, I hope you had an amazing week. Until next time, thanks for listening. Thanks for reading. Cheers.